Well, greetings everyone. Welcome to Stories to Share, the 7th program in this year's season. I am Joe Steinfield and I will be the moderator today. First, I want to mention the sponsors of Stories to Share. The Minute Ledger Transcript, the Savings Bank of Walpole, and Bell Tates. I also want to acknowledge Sean Driscoll, who is taking over handling audio and video today, and Laura Adams, our executive director. I want to mention that after the program, we will be having a reception. Thanks to Nancy Beltate and John Duvall, who make homemade goodies for all of us. I hope you can stay after. How many are here for the first time? Okay, well, welcome to the Jaffrey Civic Center at Stories to Share. And it's very nice to see so many familiar faces. Today's speaker, as you all know, is David Blair. David grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, went to Harvard. After Harvard, went to Kentucky, where he did 2.5 years of labor organizing in the coal fields. And then he wanted to teach, as did his late wife, Linda. So they looked around for a place to teach, and he got a job in Walpole, teaching education, agricultural education to young kids. And she got a job at Head Start. David then went to the Harris Center, teaching there, and then they took a bit of a detour and lived abroad. Came back and started our treasure, the Mariposa Museum. So today we're going to hear about how it got started, what it has done, and what its future will hopefully be. I just have one thought to share with you, and it is this. I cannot think of a better time in our country's history to hear David Blair talk about the Mariposa Museum. It's my great honor to introduce David.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy that I'm here, too. I'd like to tell you fairly briefly the story of Mariposa, and then be able to share with you the stories told by Mariposa, which I think are even more interesting. So as Joe said, Linda, Marcella, and I were school teachers. We worked in the public schools of New Hampshire starting in 1974 after finishing our program at Antioch, which was then in Harrisville. We learned a lot as teachers, and among the couple of the things we learned was that our students were very diverse. They came from different economic backgrounds. There was a lot of ethnic diversity, but that ethnic diversity was between the Finnish students, the Italians, the Greeks, the Scots, the Irish, and so on. There were very few children of color in our classrooms then. We also learned that many students did not travel very much because there was also a lot of economic diversity, and there were students who perhaps didn't go further than Boston during their school career, and if they ever traveled overseas, it was probably because they were in the armed forces. So those were two learnings that we took away from our school teaching career. We spent 6 of the 10 years between 1984 and 1993 overseas, mostly in the Philippines and in Vietnam, also sometime in China. And when we were there, we collected a lot of folk art, which are the things that people make and use in their everyday lives. They could be kitchen implements, clothing, musical instruments, toys, and so on. We came back, and I began teaching as the ESL director for the Kandal district. And there I got to meet immigrant children for the first time. And primarily at that time, Cambodian American children, the grandchildren of the first to arrive in Peterborough and also in Jaffrey. It was a community of about 50 Cambodian Americans living in Peterborough and in Jaffrey, which is surprising. Most people didn't know they were there, but they were. And those children were most of the students that I taught, and they represented most of the ethnic diversity in the schools at that time, most of the people of color at least. So while I was in that job, a secretary in the SAU, Polly Pierce, suggested that we might do an exhibit about Vietnam based on the collection that we had brought back. There's a really nice gallery in back of the SAU, a display case, but also walls. And we installed an exhibit about Vietnam using just what we had collected. We wrote curriculum. We trained student docents from South Meadow School, and we let it be known for about 3 months. We hosted groups from the school district who wanted to come and have an experience of Vietnam. It was wonderful. It was very interactive. Kids did shadow puppet plays, they wore clothes, they played instruments. We really loved doing it, and we learned that we were very good at doing it, and also that there was a real desire to have more, to bring world cultures alive for students and teachers. So then we thought, well, let's do another, and we did another on Japan, drawing partly on our own collection, but not mostly. And we did a third on Africa, and we had nothing from Africa, but we drew entirely from the community. And here we learned another important lesson, which is this community is amazing in the depth of experience that you all have, the places you've traveled and worked, what you've collected, and that you were willing to lend things to us to use in those exhibits. So Linda and I were really excited at this possibility and felt this is something we could do, but we didn't have a place to do it until, and I now will share with you the story of our museum.
Hello. I'm David Blair, the co-founder of Mariposa Museum. I'm here today to share the story of this building with you. The Baptist church, where the Mariposa Museum lives, was dedicated in 1842 for the congregation of mill workers that had been meeting in Peterborough since 1822. The church disbanded in 1926, and since then the upper floor has housed a center for the Scouts, an art gallery, antique store, ballet school, the office of the Monadnock Ledger, and the New England Marionette Opera Theater. Since 1842, many retail businesses have occupied the first floor. A harness shop, a barber shop, a shoe store, a notion shop, an electronics store, and Joseph's Coat. A devastating fire on New Year's Day 1999 gutted the building, after which it stood cased in ice for many months. For 2 years, the building stood empty, awaiting a vision and a tenant. On the eve of the planned demolition, downtown 2000, a group of concerned citizens bought the building from the owner. The vision came from Linda Marcella, the owner of Joseph's Coat, who imagined the space as a museum of folk art and world cultures, a place for the community to gather and celebrate our heritage as members of the human family, and a place to teach children and the community about all cultures of the world. Linda and I bought the building, raised money for renovation beginning in the fall of 2001, and formed the nonprofit Journeys in Education, also known as Mariposa Museum. On July 1st, 2002, Mariposa Museum opened its doors with great celebration. Since then, Mariposa has welcomed thousands of visitors from the state of New Hampshire, from the U.S., and indeed from all around the world. Our guests come to see special exhibitions, related performances and programs, and our permanent collection. They come to learn about other cultures, hands-on, and through the stories told by the artifacts made and used in those cultures. Visitors to Mariposa can play instruments from all around the world, try on costumes from other cultures, and bring our puppets and marionettes to life. Mariposa is a place where you are invited to touch with respect, to be curious, to celebrate. 2,000 students from kindergarten through college come to the museum every year or have outreach visits in their classrooms. They learn about other cultures through the beautiful objects that tell their stories. Visitors of all ages come to Mariposa to enjoy a wide range of programs and performance. African drumming and dance with the Aquabel Ensemble, Scandinavian dancers, Scottish pipers, a Filipino dance group and rondalia, the Encore dance troupe from Lowell's Cambodian community, and taiko drummers who performed a benefit for the victims of the earthquake and tsunami in Japan. Tibetan monks have created sand mandalas filled with sacred blessings. The museum continues to be a vibrant meeting place for people from the Monadnock region, the state of New Hampshire and beyond, a passport to the world in downtown Peterborough. Thank you.
I'm now going to, again, let the museum tell its own story through some of our artifacts. I could try to gallop through the entire table in front of you. I don't think I would make it, so we may not get to every single thing on this table. What do you think this might be? It is a yoke. What's it used for? Carrying water, could be for carrying milk, could be for carrying maple sap. Who would have used it and where? On farms, right. And this is small. It wouldn't fit me, and my body is too broad. So this is a yoke used by a child somewhere, probably in New England. Children worked on farms, as you well know. If you grew up on one, you definitely know that. So this artifact tells a story of children working and helping their parents in their agricultural life. How about this? Anything that you notice about it? What it might be made of, or it's bamboo, that's right. So it's a bamboo stick, not very flexible. It has a notch on each end. That's a great idea. Right, okay. This is a bamboo carrying pole. Used, this doll comes from Thailand. We've seen them in use also in Vietnam. Rather than a yoke, heavy weights are carried in baskets or pails on each end of the pole. That's why you have the notch to keep the wire or the twine from slipping off. And this, again, is a child's carrying pole because it's too short for an adult to use. And so this is a way a child in Southeast Asia might be learning how to do what she or he will be needing to do as an adult. Children are working all the time. Now, one of the most common jobs that children have, what do you think it might be? Some of the things that kids all around the world would do as work.
Farm work.
Pardon me?
Farm work.
Farm work, yes.
Fetch water.
Fetching water, yes.
Take care of the younger ones.
Take care of the younger ones.
Harvesting.
Harvesting, all very true. I am going to ask Nora, would you stand up, please? Dylan, would you help out, please? You need to strap, Nora, turn your back to me. And this goes over her shoulders, under her arms, and comes around and is tied in back. Thank you. Now, what might this be for, this simple fabric sling? How about carrying a baby? Would you, Dylan, please see if you can fit this into Nora's baby carrier? And Nora, would you parade up and down the hall, please? And you will notice that the doll is carrying a baby. If you look closely, you will see that this small doll from Africa is indeed doing exactly what Nora is doing. Thank you. Dylan, you can release her from her prison there. The doll also tells another story that people carry babies, but this doll is pretty primitive and very likely made at home by a child or by a parent. This is a little fancier though, so I'm not sure of that, but children do in many cultures, including here, make their own toys. Maybe they don't have money to buy a toy, maybe they have no place to buy a toy. So one thing it's great to share, especially with children, is to ask them, so what toys do you make in your home? Or what chores do you do? Because children all around the world, as different as we are, we do share a great amount. So if taking care of children is one of the, perhaps, you often see a 5-year-old in the Philippines or in Vietnam carrying a 1-year-old on her or his hip. It's so common that children are caring for their younger siblings. Now, there's another job. Lena grew up in the Philippines in a house somewhat like this. Houses would be made of bamboo. At least they were at the time Lena grew up, and later they were made of wood planking. And there was a couple of jobs that Lena had to do. Lena is my wife. Lena, would you? So she had to sweep the floor, and these brooms called walis are very effective. They're made of grass fibers that they could harvest locally, and often brooms might be made using coconut ribs, which are stiffer, to get some of the more ingrained dirt out of the floor. So coconut, bamboo, grass, materials that are available locally. Now here is any thoughts about what this might be? It is a coconut husk. And here is how it was used. Scrubbing the floor. You have a wood floor, and Lena said she would do this to music sometimes. But her grandfather didn't necessarily approve of the music she listened to. So thank you, Lena. So again, children working. I mentioned that, as we said, children make their own toys often. One of my most favorite toys is this. It is very simple, definitely made from pieces of junk that a child could pick up anywhere in the trash. Some plastic twine, a little circle of rubber, 2 tiny pieces of metal to give it a little weight, and a rubber band. What might this be for? Exactly. It is a hacky sack. I'm terrible at hacky sack, but if we put a string across here, and my partner was over there, a string across the sidewalk in Vietnam, and 2 kids just kicking the hacky sack back and forth. They didn't need to buy this, they made it. And there is a toy made in West Africa, a lovely book, children's book called Gali Moto. Moto as in motor, moto in French-speaking West Africa. Finding an old coat hanger or a piece of wire and twisting it into a push toy. And now this was made for the tourists. It's adorned, it's kind of fancy, but the basic wire toy is something that kids in Africa would make, And as it rotates, what happens? Now, what would impart the up and down motion from a wheel turning?
A cam.
Thank you, a cam. What's called an offset cam or camshaft, which we have in our cars. That's what makes the pistons go up and down. So there's a camshaft here. The back axle is not one straight piece. It has bends in it like this. And that's what gives the up and down motion. So children figured out, the camshaft. And they've used it in Africa and in Vietnam. Because this, you will recognize this creature as we push him along. The arms go up and down, and he beats on a drum. This is a tin can, bottle tops. I would say this toy was probably not made by a child because it required some cutting, metal cutting, and a little bit of soldering here, but a similar toy could be made by a child. So again, the camshaft. Vietnam, West Africa, kids know about the camshaft. And this is particularly interesting to me because you recognize, of course, our generation recognizes the Energizer Bunny. This toy was made in Vietnam around 1991 or 92. There was an embargo. There was no U.S. trade with Vietnam. So how did some Vietnamese craftsperson see the Energizer Bunny and figure, oh, I'll make a toy from that? Culture travels in spite of embargoes and tariffs and such. And so here we have a very simple street toy from Vietnam. Children all over the world make dolls and play with dolls. And this doll has a special story. It has several stories. I'm going to tell you one. I think it's a good story. I think it's true, too. During the time of slavery, black children often saw their mothers taking care of white children if the mother was in the plantation house. So it would have been natural for a black child to say to her mother, "Mommy, I'd like a doll. I'd like a doll like the children you take care of." And mother would have said, "Honey, you're not allowed to play with a white doll outside." Apparently that was not acceptable. So here is the doll you can play with outside. And then when the child comes inside, so there are many variations of this doll. There's one with the big bad wolf and with Little Red Riding Hood and Grandma on the other side. But this topsy-turvy doll tells the story of when we enslaved black people, Africans, in this country, and yet how the resourcefulness of the enslaved people to create a doll that the child could play with. This is a story, we share these stories at Mariposa when we do our program, Children Across Cultures, in a very similar way, except you would be sitting in a big circle around these things in the center of the floor, and I would be asking you, what do you want to know about? And you would pick something, you would point to something, and we would share stories and ask questions. What do you think this is? I would ask a child. So I'll ask you, what do you think this is? It could be. Yes. Any other ideas? Chocolate. You guys know too much. I've heard from children it's for holding a candle. It's what the king holds. I even heard it's for mashing cockroaches. And very common, if we're quiet, maybe we can hear this. Very often children will say it's a baby's rattle, which is really a great guess. But you are quite correct. This is called a molinillo, one name. So it's made, when you have your hot chocolate, instead of having that thing that comes off the espresso machine that froths the milk, you just, it's kind of like a whisk, and it makes it frothy. So this is an object from a kitchen in Mexico or somewhere else in Latin America, and it tells a story of chocolate, which after all came from Mexico, from the Mayans and the Aztecs. And actually the chocolate's Latin name is Theobroma, food of the gods. And the food of the gods was not the cacao pod, the seed, but the white pulp that surrounded it, which is delicious, but very perishable, so we don't get to eat it unless we're down in a place where chocolate is being harvested fresh. If ever you're there, ask for the food of the gods. And it illustrates something about folk art. This is not signed. We don't know who made it. It's a functional object, but it's beautiful. Folk art is often very beautiful because beauty is part of our lives too. And just because something is useful doesn't mean it can't be beautiful. The Shipibo people of the Amazon, the Peruvian Amazon, I believe, will plant this stick in the ground. It's pointed, it's nicely carved, it doesn't need to be so fancifully carved, and this God's eye in front is intended to ward off evil, ward off anything that could be harmful from the home. And I believe that this is used primarily if someone inside the home is sick or if there's a newborn child. So you place this in the ground, and it's a way of saying not only to the bad spirits, stay away, but maybe to visitors, as we would do if someone was sick in our home. We wouldn't put this in front of the door, but we might put a sign on the door saying, please don't come in, or just let our friends know, my baby's only a week old. This is not a good time to visit. This is the way the Shipibo would communicate that message. It's a universal message, and this is a very beautiful way to say it. So, children everywhere, they play and they work. And then they get a little older, and something else begins to happen. They begin to court and to flirt, perhaps. So this is a New England object. It is called a courting candle. And if at some time a young person, I need to get this working right. Here we go, I think. Let's say in a New England home, the young woman had a young man who wanted to come visit her. There would be a place called the parlor, perhaps, where they would sit together, probably with some supervision. And if the parents approved of the young man and thought, well, we'll let this visit last a while, they might raise the candle up to here. Once it burns down to here, it's time to go, young man. But if they really did not think very highly of this young man, then maybe down here. So that's the New England courting candle. Now, I want to tell you about this, but first, you may have noticed how beautiful this baby carrier was. It comes from the Hmong people, a hill people who live in the mountains of Laos, Vietnam, China, and Thailand, up in the Golden Triangle of Thailand, for instance. Linda and I worked with the Hmong in northwestern Vietnam. This jacket comes from northwestern Vietnam, and it tells a story. It tells a story of an agricultural people where the women primarily grow the flax that this is made from and process the flax. They grow the indigo that dyes it. They know how to do batik and cross-stitch and applique, and they create these garments every year for every member of their family for the Hmong New Year. It's a huge amount of work, and girls are learning these skills as girls, because when they get to age of marriage, they are, which might be 15 or 16, they are expected to be creating these garments. It's a huge amount of work. And then these are worn every day. They're not put away in a chest. They're worn every day. They wear out. Next New Year, you better have the next ones done. So that's a story of a gender difference of work, how hard the women are. Not that the men don't work hard, they do, but the women are working super hard. Does that sound familiar? So the more modern story is that when we went to a village and looked for our Hmong friend and found her in store-bought Vietnamese clothes, we were shocked. Why aren't you wearing your traditional finery? She said, it takes too much time. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to spend my time making these garments all the time. So in a sense, oh, what a shame. Are we going to lose the traditional textile skills? But also, she's free. She's suddenly free to do other things with her time. So again, clothing tells lots of stories. Now, I am going to ask Anna and Sam. Anna, would you go down there, please? And Sam, would you stand up here next to me? The Hmong live all over, dispersed around the mountains of Asia. And they're relatively small groups, and they need, at the New Year, to meet other Hmong in order to court and to basically diversify the gene pool. Because if everyone intermarried within their own small community, ultimately that would not be healthy. So the Hmong travel a lot between villages across national borders at the time of the Hmong New Year. That happens in this country too. There's a large Hmong population in Gardner, Fitchburg, Mass. When they do their New Year in April, there will be Hmong from Stockton, Hmong from Minneapolis who are coming there, and they will go to those New Years also. It's their way of socializing, and in a sense, it's carrying on this tradition of mixing. So Anna, please don't stand that far away. At the Hmong New Year, a row of young men pardon me, I'm pretending to be a young man, stands opposite a row of young women. Now, I see a young woman over there. Ooh, I like the look of her. So I toss this to her. Now, if she catches it, that could be a good sign. If she dropped it, it might mean, no. But she has an option. She sees me with my, that's the option. So this is a flirting game, a courtship game played by the Hmong. It's a traditional way that they have of finding their partner. Thank you. What is this? It's a lunch pail. Children are so interested to see that lunches used to be carried in pails and not in lunch boxes. And here is a lunch pail, but a multi-storied one from Thailand. Possibly could be from another Southeast Asian countries. And I learned today from Alan that this is also used in Bolivia. So in Asia, your rice would be here because it's what you're eating most of, and it's hot, and the heat from the rice coming up could warm your meat and your vegetables. And this is something that I've seen construction workers taking to their construction sites in Bangkok. They might not be quite so ornamented, but again, all people all over the world need to eat, and we need to have different ways to carry our food. So whether it's a Thai or Bolivian lunch pail or an American one, those work. What do you notice? Just any comments about this? What you think it might be for? What's it made of? Any guesses you might have about where it comes from? It's a hat. It is indeed a hat. In fact, it's kind of like a crown. Okay? Anything else? What do you see? Birds, right. Kind of like woodpeckers or something like that. Mead, what kind of bird is this?
I'm wondering if it's a roadrunner.
A roadrunner, okay. Okay. It is beaded. It's all beaded. And the armature is probably some form of basket work, I think, covered with beads. And you notice this beautiful fringe that comes down around it. This is the crown of a Yoruba chieftain from Nigeria. And the Yoruba, some of you may know Segun Olorinfemi, who used to live in this area. Segun is Yoruba himself. And I wish he were here to tell you more than I can about it. But the Yoruba chief would wear this. He would be sitting above you. You would never have your head higher than his head. You would approach him with great respect. And this fringe is partly to obscure his face. Now, why would that be? It might be because it's impolite to look directly into the king's eyes. But it is also because the king holds such spiritual power that his gaze straight into your eyes, kind of like Zeus and the thunderbolts, it might be dangerous to you. So the fringe, this is an object of great spiritual power, or it was used by someone who had great spiritual power. So I hope I'm not being in any way sacrilegious in handling it. But it is, it speaks to we can talk about the work, the eating, the play, the learning, all of those things, but a very important part of every society's life are the rites of passage and the rites that recognize spirituality in whatever form it takes in that particular culture. And so here we have the Yoruba crown. Some of you already know what this is. One of you has a child or a granddaughter who was it, who told me that at a year and a half, the child was already saying, yeah.
Daruma.
Daruma. Daruma is a Japanese word. It's the Japanese form of the Sanskrit word dharma. Dharma is the teaching of the Buddha. And the Daruma portrays a very famous monk from the East. His name was Bodhidharma. He was one of the great teachers of Buddhism in Japan, of Zen Buddhism. He had a very fierce face with bushy black whiskers and a very fierce expression. He was a very enlightened monk also. So the Daruma is a toy that is given to a Japanese child at the New Year. And what do you notice? I mean, there are different sizes, slightly different colors. What do you notice a difference or something interesting about the faces? What about them? Okay, one's missing. One lacks a pupil here, and this one, no pupils yet. Okay? So this is given to a child at the New Year. The child is asked to declare an intention, or we might call it a resolution. I want to be really good at soccer. I want to join the choir. I want to get a good mark in my math class. I want so-and-so to like me. So they declare something that they want to have happen in their lives. And when they do, what do? They paint in one eye. When might they paint in the second eye? When they reach their goal. And someone else suggested at the end of the year whether or not they reach their goal. But I like when they reach their goal. Then the second eye will be painted in. Now this is among other things, this is a teaching toy. And I'm going to do something up here. I'm not sure you can all see it, so if you cannot, please stand up in the back, because I need you to be able to see the daruma. It is specially made with a weighted bottom. Kind of like those pool toys that you push over and they bounce back up. Okay, was everyone able to see that? Yeah. No? I'll do it again. Okay. So what lesson is the Dharma teaching? Keep at it.
Determination, persistence.
Persist. If at first you don't succeed, try again. We all would have different, I don't know what phrase the Japanese would use, but the toy is teaching a lesson. So all around the world we have different ways of sharing wisdom, of teaching lessons. Children are always learning, whether or not they can go to school. They're always learning, of course. And this is one way the Japanese have of teaching a lesson to their children. I look at the table and I can't believe it, but I think okay, one more thing. What might this be for? A stool. I definitely thought this was a stool, but I've been told, no, it's not a stool. It is a headrest. Very uncomfortable headrest. But it comes from East Africa. And it's interesting partly because of this to me. To me, what this tells me a story of is, first of all, you have a climate where you might want to have your head up a little bit so that air is circulating because it's kind of hot. Or maybe you don't want your head right on the ground because of things that are scurrying around on the ground. Maybe. But also, it's light and it can be carried. So this might speak to a culture of people who are nomadic, who move around from time to time, following their animals, for instance, because in those places, there is not a green pasture like at Cole's Dairy Farm down, the grass, you have to move to get the grass. You can't just stay in one place and have your animals fine, and you don't have bales of hay to feed them either. So this is another thing that has been suggested was a cockroach stamper, but okay, good. Now, I think that is my phone, yes, telling me that it is time to wrap up. So, as Joe said in his introduction, this is really an important time. It's always important to understand other cultures because we live in a global world. Our communities are global. Our neighbors are from all around the world, but we're also doing business and traveling with the entire globe. And at this moment in this country, there are people who are promoting a narrative of hate and fear, and the other, promoting narratives of invasion that, in my opinion, are simply not true. We need to offer another narrative, which is that the world is small and that we need to understand our neighbors and enjoy them and not be afraid of them, whether that's the neighbor next door or the neighbor halfway around the world. And that's why I think Mariposa's work is so very, very important now. I'm going to close with a quote, but before I do, I would just ask Miriam, could you stand up? Miriam Carter is our new executive director at Mariposa. And I hope that if you stay for the reception, you'll have the chance to meet her, to talk to her. So I'm going to close with a quote from Alexander Gerard, who with his wife assembled the greatest collection of folk art in the world. Something happened there. Okay, never mind. So Alexander Gerard and his wife collected folk art, and they made an incredible donation of their collection to the Santa Fe Museum of International Folk Art. And if you ever are in Santa Fe, do go to that museum. He wrote, are we okay? You want me to? Okay. So, quoting Alexander Girard, an old Italian proverb says, tutto il mondo è paese. The whole world is hometown. The whole world must know about itself. Folk art tells us there are no foreigners. The colors vary, the languages vary, but their spirits and aspirations are interwoven into one incredibly rich humanity. Thank you.
So now we have comments or questions. Who would like to go first? Don't be shy. Yes.
David, I'm just
Stand up, please, so we can all hear you.
Okay, Janet Grant. David, I'm just wondering, in terms of Miriam coming in now, what the plans are in terms of growth and activities. I think we can all be excited about them and work with you, Miriam, so thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful question. It's almost like you're a plant. So I'm grateful to be associated with Mariposa. It feels to me a little bit like coming home. My career as an artist took me around the country. Then I was in the League, New Hampshire Craftsman for 8 years. And then as I considered what my next act would be, this opportunity appeared. I will tell you right from the start, if it wasn't for Gloria Anderson on our board and David Blair, our founder, I would not have joined. We have a very dedicated board because at this time in nonprofits, especially nonprofits as small as Mariposa, excuse me, I keep hitting this kind gentleman's feet with my long legs. Ever since COVID, it's been very difficult for a lot of nonprofits to sustain themselves and survive. Luckily, we're not affected by federal funding. I'm grateful for that. But last year, the board, in the transition from our former director leaving, the board asked the community, is the Mariposa remaining relevant? Do you care? And the response was really profound. So that is to say that we need your support. Our plan will be, and is in fact happening right now. Tomorrow, the entire board is coming to the museum, and we're doing spring cleaning at the Mariposa, which I don't believe has happened before.
No.
So we have an amazing collection, but we've had to cull it to make sure that we have the most important objects to show to everyone. So that's the physical aspect. There will be some events in the future to help us share those pieces with people that we no longer want and we want to assess. But I think and hope that you'll support the museum as a community center. In the past 10, 20 years, libraries and museums have become the meeting places for community. You certainly see that in the library. And the Mariposa has been acting upon that. We had a great event last night, which has been going on this entire winter, called the Great Decisions Program that Gloria helped establish. You're going to see a lot of musical performances. I basically am a yes person, so if you have an idea you'd like to bring to us to say we'd like to have this gathering, you'll generally have a very warm, receptive answer to that. That World Culture Center aspect of our name is really important at this time. We need a place where we can meet, where we can talk, where we can share each other's cultures and support each other through this challenging world that we live in now. So I think it's timely that the Mariposa is here now, but it's also in this transition. And in order to be sustainable, we're going to need the community support. That'll be coming through community events, fundraisers, favorite words of nonprofit leaders. Sam and I were just talking about that. But I think it's an exciting time because it's kind of a time to create a new vision, which if I didn't have this amazing board, I wouldn't be able to do the work I'm doing, nor would I have the support of the community. So please join us. We're always looking for money. Yesterday was a tough day for everybody. We're going to move past that. Please respond to our annual campaigns. But most of all, please come see what we're doing. You're going to see a new gift shop with items from the American craft world, which I've lived in for my entire career, as well as more international craft. Our education room is going to become an education room. We're going to have classes. We're going to have art classes, talks, a lot of different education programming. Love to have your ideas and your ideas for that. And then upstairs, you're going to see wonderful events. I'm really excited, a lot of musical events. I had someone from the Sikh tradition come to me today, and we're going to have an Earth Day celebration. So a lot of musical events. We have wonderful sponsorship for music. So please join us, please support us, and thank you for all you've done in the past to support the museum. It's still here, it's still vibrant, and I'm looking forward to a rich future.
Yeah.
Well said.
David, I wonder if you could say a little bit more about exactly what it is that you did when you lived abroad and how that facilitated your interaction with people.
In the Philippines,
Repeat the question.
so the question was, what did my family do while we were abroad? In the Philippines, Linda and I worked in the Philippine Refugee Processing Center where we met Lena, who was our family's best friend there. We were working with refugees from Southeast Asia who'd been approved for resettlement in the US, but were transitioning through a 6-month program in the Philippines before moving on. And my daughter Anna and my son Sam valiantly suffered through that experience. And I think they gained, I believe we all gained a lot from it. And it was not always easy. And yes, not much good cheese there indeed.
2.5 years without cheese.
2.5 years without cheese.
Exaggerate a little bit. We could
Yeah.
drive 5 hours to Manila
Yeah,
and get a big block of cheese and bring it back.
yeah. In Vietnam, Linda and I worked as the country representatives for the American Friends Service Committee, which was doing rural development work in the north, primarily in the Northwest, in 2 northern provinces. So water systems, livestock vaccination, things we knew absolutely nothing about, but fortunately had really good Vietnamese technical people so that we could manage projects which they could implement. Knowing the language and the culture and knowing the technical fields. That's primarily what we did. I want to add to Janet's question, our exhibits going forward will be drawn both from our own collection, which is right now we have an exhibit of Guatemalan textiles, a gift from a Peace Corps volunteer who'd been in Guatemala and was moving and gave us this fantastic collection. But we'll also be continuing to bring in exhibits from time to time, including in July, will it be, Bedtime Stitches, which is the artwork for a book about beds and bedrooms around the world by a really fine, a very well-known textile artist named Sally Mavor. So we'll be mixing exhibits from our own collection with exhibits that are already put together, curated, that we can bring to the museum.
Yes.
You spent a lot of time identifying and collecting unique artifacts, things that catch your eye, things that are largely unfamiliar. Have you had an experience where you saw something that was entirely unfamiliar and after a blink or two registered as something you'd always known or felt?
Sometimes there was a real recognition, like Energizer Bunny. I had no problem recognizing not only what it was, but sort of what it represented to me. But there were objects here that I had no idea about. I might have said God's eye, but I wouldn't have known any more about it. And actually, it's interesting you say this, because I no longer remember exactly how I learned what I know about these. And sometimes I wonder whether my stories are 100%. But it's a good story and I'm sticking to it.
I'm looking for another hand. Well,
Jane in the back.
David, I know you're very involved in supporting immigrants in our community, people from other cultures, and I wondered if you would just briefly, more than one organization, I wonder if you would be willing to briefly share that with the groups so that they're aware of the work that you and others are doing.
Yeah, it's sort of a natural extension for me of my interest in other cultures is to welcome people from other cultures who live in our communities. So I've been working with Project Home for over 5 years, which has welcomed asylum seekers, often from detention centers along the border, to come up and live in our communities, which is totally legal, what we're doing, but to support them toward being able to work and drive, and we hope one day to win their asylum cases. And now I'm involved in a broader effort to help all kinds of immigrants to know their rights and to be prepared should something unfortunate happen, something scary, that the community knows our rights and how we can legally support and stand in solidarity with immigrant neighbors. And if you're curious about any of that, just contact me. Jane knows a lot also.
Anyone else? Well, David, I'm so grateful to you and to your entire family. I did not know that when, thanks to Heather Ames, whose idea it was to invite David. Thank you, Heather.
Yes, Heather.
I did not know that not only would David come as an unpaid speaker, but that his family would come as unpaid helpers. Sorry about that. And the whole notion of community and of everything that David talked about, Jane spoke about, that's Jane Shapiro in the back, leads me to something which Ms. Carter also brought up, and it is unusual. This is not a political event, and it's not a fundraising event. But institutions do not necessarily have eternal life. And any of us who can provide support, send a check, go into the museum and buy a ticket, whatever it takes. I hope you will consider doing so. We've had wonderful speakers this year, and you're up there with the best.
Thank you. Next month, David Godine. How many times have you all driven past that big, beautiful red Godine publishing sign and wondered, is there really a David Godine? Well, there is, and he will be our speaker next month. So send in your reservation and stay, please, for our reception. And now I'll introduce President of the Jaffrey Civic Center, David Beltate. Hello, everyone.
Thank you all for coming, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I'd like to thank you all for coming. And David, a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you, David.
As you know, we don't enumerate our speakers, and I have a few announcements to make. Currently, we reception, and we have a show, 3 shows. In this room, we have what's called Voice by Jill Fishman, and its official opening is tomorrow. Feel free to come by in the evening. Upstairs, we have the Members Spring exhibition, and in our display cases, we have what's called Magnified Voices, which is a youth exhibition that is traveling around the state. It's artwork by teenagers expressing some of their angst. I would like to thank all that John and my wife do to prepare this thing and make it happen, as well as Joe for his great stewardship and Master of Ceremonies talents. Please join us next month for Mr. Godin, and the following month for Dave Duncan. There will be, as always, we have interesting speakers. It's always fun.
Thank you.